All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. And today we're talking all about the Panama Canal.
Ooh, yeah, this is gonna be good.
And for all you UPSC aspirants out there listening,
Definitely one to pay attention to, right?
this is a topic you're definitely going to want to know a lot about. I mean, think about it. The Panama Canal,
Huge deal, yeah.
it's a major choke point for global trade. It's got this super fascinating history.
You're not kidding. You've got colonialism, you've got US power, and now,
Oh, what now?
well, now you've got the potential for a whole new era of conflict. It's like all the
All
ingredients
put it together.
for a geopolitical pressure cooker.
And we're going to break it all down. So let's start with the basics.
Okay, sounds good.
For a good chunk of the 20th century, who was really calling the shots when it came to the Panama Canal?
Well, basically, the US had a pretty firm grip on things for like over 75 years.
Wow, 75 years, that's most of a century.
Right, starting in the early 1900s, right after Panama broke away from Colombia, and lasting all the way until 1999. But we're not just talking about some kind of, hands-off control here.
Oh, really?
No, the U.S. had this whole enclave within Panama.
An enclave? What does that even mean?
It was called the Canal Zone. And get this, it had its own government, courts, and military presence. It was like a little slice of America right there in Panama.
That's wild. So basically, Panama had this, like, mini U.S. right in its backyard for decades.
Yeah, basically, it was a pretty big deal.
I bet it caused some tension.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There was a growing resentment in Panama.
Of course, they wanted control of their own territory.
Exactly. And eventually, things started to change. Enter President Jimmy Carter.
Ah, yes, President Carter. A bit of a peacemaker, wasn't he?
He definitely had that reputation. He signed the Panama Canal Treaty and the Treaty of Permanent Neutrality back in 1977. Those are the agreements that started the whole process of handing the canal back over to Panama.
Those treaties. Definitely something for our UPSC folks to study up on.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it is a classic example of how these international agreements can really reshape the whole geopolitical landscape.
So tell me more about those treaties. What did they actually say?
Well, the Panama Canal Treaty laid out how the transfer would happen.
Okay.
Panama would gradually take over administrative and military duties, and then eventually gain full control in 1999.
Okay, so a step-by-step process.
Right. And the Treaty of Permanent Neutrality, well, that one is interesting because it says that the canal has to remain neutral, but it also gives the U.S. the right to defend it if there are any threats.
Wait a minute. I thought the whole point was for Panama to be in charge. Why would the U.S. still have the right to intervene militarily?
Yeah, that's where things get a little tricky. That right to defend clause has always been a bit controversial.
I can see why.
Some people say it gives the U.S. too much power to, meddle in Panama's business.
And others?
Others say it's absolutely necessary to keep the canal safe, for global trade and all that.
Okay, so different perspectives on that. And how has it played out since the handover?
Well, the interpretation of that clause has definitely changed over time.
How so?
And it's still a very sensitive issue.
I bet. So for a while there, it seemed like things had settled down. Panama was in control. The canal was operating smoothly.
Right, right. But then
Now then,
a certain former U.S. president decided to stir the pot a little.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Donald Trump. Yeah, during his presidency, he made some pretty eyebrow-raising statements about the Panama Canal.
Didn't he actually accuse Panama of, like, ripping off the U.S. with the canal fees?
He did. He said they were charging excessive tariffs.
What? Like highway robbery?
Exactly. He even suggested that maybe, just maybe, the U.S. should take back control of the canal. Said it wasn't fair how much Panama was supposedly profiting.
Whoa, hold on a sec. I thought we were done with all that back in '99. What was his reasoning there?
Well, aside from the tariffs, he was also really worried about China. He kept talking about how China was getting too much influence in Panama and how that could be a threat to U.S. interests.
Ah, yes. China. Always the wild card.
Right. And Trump definitely played up that angle. He even said, and I quote, "The canal was solely for Panama to manage, not China or anyone else."
It sounds like he was trying to appeal to that old idea of the U.S., being the big protector of the region.
Exactly. He was tapping into that historical narrative.
Yeah.
Well, Panama wasn't exactly thrilled about this whole thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be either. Someone telling me how to run my own country.
They basically told Trump to back off. Panama's leaders were like, nope, no undue Chinese influence here. And by the way, our canal tolls are set through a totally transparent international process. So, get your facts straight.
Ouch. That's got to sting.
It was pretty clear they weren't buying what Trump was selling. President Molino even called Trump's accusations baseless.
So this whole thing is getting pretty complicated, right? We've got historical baggage, clashing personalities, modern geopolitical rivalries. What does it all mean in the big picture?
Well, for me, this situation really highlights a trend we're seeing all over the world. New powers rising up and challenging the old guard. The U.S. is still a major player, of course, but it's facing more and more competition from countries like China that are trying to expand their influence.
And the Panama Canal, because it's so strategically important, kind of becomes a symbol of this power struggle.
Exactly. It's like a microcosm of what's happening on a global scale. China's been investing a ton of money in infrastructure projects all over Latin America.
Like the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yes, and that includes Panama. So naturally, Washington's getting a little nervous. They're worried about China's long-term goals and what it could mean for U.S. interests, especially when you consider that the canal is such a crucial choke point for global trade. If the balance of power shifts there, it could have huge ripple effects all over the world.
All right, so let's bring it back to our UPSC folks. What are the big takeaways here? What do they need to know to really understand this issue?
Okay, so first of all, the history of the Panama Canal is like a crash course in colonialism, nationalism, and international diplomacy. It's all right there. Then you've got the treaties governing the canal, especially that right to defend clause, which shows how even seemingly simple agreements can lead to all sorts of complications and potential conflicts down the road. And finally, the current situation with Trump and China and all that really highlights how global power dynamics are shifting and the challenges the U.S. is facing in trying to hold on to its traditional influence.
So it sounds like the future of the Panama Canal is, shall we say, up in the air.
Yeah, up in the air is a good way to put it. This whole thing is a reminder that even historical events that we think are settled can suddenly become relevant again when the global landscape starts to change. It's like history never really goes away, it just keeps evolving.
It definitely makes you wonder what's going to happen next. What should our listeners, especially those UPSC aspirants, be keeping an eye on in the years to come? What are the big questions we should be asking?
The million-dollar question is whether the Panama Canal will become a flashpoint in this growing rivalry between the U.S. and China. Will the U.S. try to cling to its historical role as the guarantor of the canal's security? Or will it step back and let Panama chart its own course? And how will Panama navigate its relationships with these two superpowers, both of whom have a lot of leverage? These are the questions that are going to shape the future of the region and have huge implications for the whole world.
Definitely some food for thought there. To all our listeners, especially our UPSC aspirants, the Panama Canal is a topic you'll want to dig into. The history, the politics, the economics, it's all connected, and it's all crucial to understanding the world today.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe one of you will be the ones to figure out what happens next.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the Panama Canal, don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations of the most fascinating topics in global affairs.
And be sure to let us know what you think down in the comments. We love hearing from you.
Until next time.
See you then.